بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. In yesterday's lesson we spoke about a great and mighty principle from the principles of Islam, which is al-wala wal-bara, which is to love and to hate for the sake of Allah, and following on from that is to show loyalty for the sake of Allah and to show disloyalty for the sake of Allah. And practically speaking, this means to ally with and befriend with certain categories of people and to keep away from and disavow certain groups and categories of people. And we mentioned from the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 6 or 7 ahadith in which we find mentioned many great rewards or benefits or qualities and traits which are associated with this particular quality of loving and hating for the sake of Allah. Just to summarize, we mentioned from the Sunnah that having this quality of loving and hating for the sake of Allah is the strongest handhold of a person's faith, and that it is a completion of a person's faith. It is the completion of a person's faith. That a person only really he tastes Iman and he tastes the sweetness of Iman when he makes wala and bara, when he chooses his company on the basis of loving and hating for the sake of Allah. And likewise we mentioned that a person who has this quality and this trait, that he will receive the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Yawmul Qiyamah. And likewise that he will receive the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he has this particular quality. And likewise from the statement we mentioned of Ibn Abbas, that to earn the walaya of Allah, which means the friendship of Allah and the protection of Allah, that a person has this quality of loving only for the sake of Allah, hating for the sake of Allah, having allegiance to someone for the sake of Allah, and having disloyalty towards someone for the sake of Allah. We mentioned after that this topic of al-wala wal-bara can relate to the non-Muslims, because in its foundation, Islam in its foundation requires that we free ourselves from kufr and shirk and its people. And this is the definition of Islam. As the scholars explain, Islam is al-istislamu lillah wal-inqiyad lahu bit-ta'ah wal-bara'atu min ash-shirki wa ahlihi. This is the essence of Islam. That you submit to Allah in His tawheed, that you inwardly believe in the tawheed of Allah, in His names, in His attributes, that He is alone in His rububiyyah, in creating and owning and providing, that He alone has a right to be worshipped. So inwardly you make istislam to Allah, you submit to Allah upon these issues. And then you outwardly you comply in obedience to Allah. This is the second element, al-inqiyad lahu bit-ta'ah. And the third element is al-bara'atu min ash-shirk wa ahlihi, that you free yourself from the people of shirk, from shirk and its people. So in its asal, Islam requires us to free ourselves from this falsehood of kufr and shirk. We mentioned yesterday that this isn't our topic that we are discussing, the topic of al-wala wal-bara as it relates to the non-Muslims, and this is a separate discussion. We also mentioned that even though Islam requires this from us, Islam is also just, and it does not allow us to be oppressive towards the non-Muslims. Rather, we are ordered in the Quran in Surah al-Ma'idah at the beginning, in the first 6 or 7 verses, we see in those verses that we are ordered to be just towards the non-Muslims. And even though we may have, even there may be some issues between us and them of dislike and hatred and enmity, it does not mean that we are allowed to behave oppressively and unjustly towards them, even if they transgress against us. And those ayat are at the beginning of Surah al-Ma'idah. Then we said that amongst the Muslims, when it comes to implementing this principle of loving and hating for the sake of Allah, that we have a number of different categories of people. The first of them are the prophets and the messengers and the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We said that towards this group that we show nothing but absolute love, absolute loyalty. We love them from every single angle. There's no disloyalty, there's no hatred, there's nothing of that sort at all. It is absolute, unconditional love. For all of the prophets, the messengers, the Sahaba, every single one of them, and as a whole. Then we said that as for everyone else besides them, then because people have a mixture of Iman and Sunnah and Bid'ah and Taqwa and Ma'asiyah, meaning they have a mixture of truth and falsehood, and Sunnah and Bid'ah, and piety and impiety. So on that basis, we see that when we love them and then when we hate them, we see that it's something that requires some detail. And then we said that we divide the people into 3 categories. There are those who are the people of sin, who sin against their own soul. So a person, he sins in his own home, in the privacy of his own home, he harms nobody else. So he's oppressing himself, he's harming himself. So this is the first type of person. The second type of person is the one who he transgresses against somebody else. He takes his right, he harms him in his wealth, in his property, in his honor. This person now is guilty of 2 things. He harms himself, he wrongs himself, and he wrongs another person besides himself. So his crime is greater. And then we mentioned the third person is the person who innovates into the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He does 3 crimes. First of all, he disobeys Allah in this act, so he wrongs himself from this angle. Secondly, he transgresses against the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's making tabdeel of the deen of Allah. And thirdly, he's oppressing the people because he's misguiding them in their religion. So this one of all of the people is the worst of all 3 types of people. And this is why we see in the Athar, in the Sunnah, in the Athar from the Sahaba, we see statements which represent this reality, that indeed the worst of all affairs to Allah are the innovations. The Messenger said, the worst of all affairs are the newly introduced matters, and every newly introduced matter is an innovation. And there are many statements from the Salaf in this regard. You are familiar with that. So the intent behind all of that discussion yesterday was to lead to the fact that in the Quran and the Sunnah we have been given certain principles and certain guidelines as to how we deal with every individual from each of these categories. How do we behave with the prophets and messengers? How do we behave with the Sahaba? How do we behave with the sinners from Islam? How do we behave with those whose sin is not done openly? How do we behave with those who sin openly and have no shame? They sin openly without any shame. How do we behave with those who transgress the rights of other people? How do we behave with the rulers who may commit oppression? Because Islam distinguishes between all these different types of people in terms of the behavior towards them. And finally, how do we behave with the people of bid'ah and the people of dalala, people of misguidance? Because all of this is tied to the issue of al-wala wal-bara. And as we mentioned yesterday, the issue of loving and hating isn't blind, isn't full of confusion. Rather, we see that there is extremism and there is negligence, and that the Sharia and the Sunnah have clarified to us in all of these instances how do we implement this principle of al-wala wal-bara. And as a result, we avoid the extremism of the people of takfir and the people of terrorism and those people who use this principle, al-wala wal-bara, and they claim that on this basis, Muslim rulers and those who work with the government, that they are apostates and disbelievers, we can fight them, we can kill them. And likewise, they have a faulty understanding of this principle. And on the other hand, we have other people who say that this principle is no longer relevant in our time because the Muslim Ummah is divided and weak and oppressed. And so therefore we have to abolish this principle so we can unite everybody together. So the Shi'i, the Rafidi, the Jahmi, the Mu'tazili, every deviant you can think of who in the name of Islam, he's upon misguidance, disbelief in many cases. So they go to that extreme. So therefore it's vital for us to understand what are the usul and the principles and the guidelines that we follow as people of the Sunnah. Because as people of the Sunnah, we are required, when we perform this da'wah to Allah, to interact with many different types of people, with sinful people, with innovating deviant people. So we must have some basira, we must have some insight, we must have some clarity as to how we operate and how we behave in all of these situations without contradicting this principle of al-wala wal-bara, which is from the greatest of the handholds of Islam. So as I mentioned yesterday, we are going to read, inshallah ta'ala, from some of the questions and answers by one of the noble sheikhs of our time, Shaykh Ubaid, al-Jabiri, حفظه ta'ala. And before we go into that, I'd like to mention a very great benefit that we took from one of the sheikhs, Shaykh Ahmad Bazmul, Hafidhahullah, who is from one of the scholars in the city of Mecca. And on our Umrah trip a couple of months back, the Shaykh gave us a great benefit which helps us to understand the issue of our scholars. He said that it is upon every single Muslim that they stick to those scholars who have a speciality. They have deep-rooted knowledge and experience in dealing with the tribulations that come to the Muslim Ummah, and the issues that arise affecting the Muslim Ummah, the calamities that affect the Muslim Ummah. And from those calamities which affect the Muslim Ummah is the presence of people who call to misguidance and call to deviation. And so there are two types of scholars, or there are scholars in whose knowledge there are different levels. So the Shaykh explained to us, and he took this from Ibn al-Qayyim in fact, because this principle was laid down by Ibn al-Qayyim. He said that the people of knowledge, they fall into categories. From the people of knowledge are those who know the truth in detail. They know the truth in detail. And they know the falsehood in a general sense. Okay, so they know everything which is good and which is truth in a detailed sense. But as for falsehood and evil, they know it in a general sense. This is one category of scholar. Another scholar is someone who knows evil in detail, but truth only in a general sense. And then there is a third category of scholar who knows the truth in detail and the falsehood in detail. Okay, once we understand this, then the Shaykh says that there are certain scholars who sometimes they do not specialize in knowledge of the evil in detail and of falsehood in detail and of bid'ah in detail. And so therefore, in their views and their opinions and their directions, there may be something of deficiency. Even though this person, the Shaykh, is from the people of knowledge and from the people of the Sunnah and Salafiyyah, so the Shaykh was pointing out to us that there is a danger when sometimes people, they have a desire in their hearts and they choose to go to a specific Shaykh because they know that the Shaykh, he's going to give them an answer which is in accordance with their desires, because the Shaykh is not one who specializes in this particular area. Okay, once we understand this, we understand that amongst the people of knowledge as a whole, all the mashayikh of the Sunnah and Salafiyyah as a whole, that there is amongst them those who have knowledge of falsehood in detail. And this is something that we shouldn't have any problem in accepting. Why? Because if we look historically speaking, let's take the example of Imam Ahmad. in the 3rd century after Hijrah, when the fitnah of the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah was present. These people who they influenced the rulers and they forced the rulers to enforce a belief which is disbelief, the belief that the Quran is created, and they forced it upon the people. And Imam Ahmad was forced to debate with these people. He was brought in front of the rulers successively, and he was forced to debate with the Jahmiyyah and the heads of misguidance. And Imam Ahmad was someone who had detailed, insightful knowledge of these people and their arguments and their misguidance. He knew exactly where they were coming from. As a result, we see that Imam Ahmad was the person who was sought after for guidance and direction. Even the rulers who left and abandoned this falsehood later, they went to Imam Ahmad and asked him, so-and-so person is a qadi in such and such place, what do you say about him? And Imam Ahmad would say, so-and-so is a Jahmi, remove him from that position. Right? So Imam Ahmad was sought after because he had knowledge of this batil in detail. And this is how it is. There are scholars in certain times and areas who specialize in the fitan, in the tribulations. And so from this we say that from those scholars who specialize in the tribulations which have affected the Muslim Ummah in the 20th century and the 21st century, the tribulations of these political groups, these jama'at, these groups have come along and they claim to rectify the Ummah and they claim to establish the Khilafah as they say. These groups came and they demolished many of the principles of Islam, Sunnah and Salafiyyah. And from those principles is this principle of al-wala wal-bara, which is the strongest handhold of Islam. So these innovators, from them, Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb, Maududi, An-Nabhani, the founder of Hizb ut-Tahrir, these people came along and they brought this party politics into Islam. Party politics, gathering all of the people together because they want to lead them towards revolutions, to topple the rulers whom they consider to be apostates, to establish Allah's law as they claim. And so for that reason you see that in the methodology of every one of these 4 individuals, if you read their books, you see a destruction of the principle of al-wala wal-bara. And so everybody will be coming under their umbrella, a Sufi, a Shi'i, a Jahmi, a grave worshipper. This is how it is. So they destroyed the principle of al-wala wal-bara. Now, when these people spread through the Muslim lands and into the Arab lands, and they moved, through with their books and writings, certain scholars, they were at the forefront of refuting these people. And from them, Shaykh Rabi' ibn Hadi al-Madkhali, from the scholars of Medina at that time, Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri, and likewise Shaykh Ahmad al-Najmi, and likewise Shaykh Zayd al-Madkhali, and likewise Shaykh Muhammad bin Hadi, and numerous others. And so therefore, we as Muslims, we as Salafis, who are living in these times, these difficult times, and we live in major cities where we have all of the groups of innovation operating as societies, as groups, and they have their da'wah. We are in need of the knowledge and the guidance and the direction of these scholars, because these scholars are the ones who know the evil in detail. The evil in detail. There are other scholars who don't have that knowledge in detail. And as a result, you see that the Hizbiyyeen, the people of Hizbiyyah, they will flock around these scholars. And they will, when they hold their conferences, they will invite those scholars. And this is out of a deception and a plot on their behalf. Because they know that these scholars, and either they don't have the knowledge or the insight into these affairs, or that they won't really speak about these issues. Okay, so upon us is to be aware of these types of issues, because this is how misguidance, when we are unaware and not on our guard, this is how misguidance can come to us. So in all that context, we have here 2 excellent lectures from the Shaykh, or 2 question and answer sessions that we're going to benefit from, inshallah ta'ala, in this lesson. And by way of this, we will start to learn some of the principles that we use when we go out and we interact with other Muslims. Those who may be our relatives, who might be upon bid'ah, those who might be upon the jama'at of Hizbiyyah. How do we behave with all of these people? So we begin with the first series of question and answers, and this is a lecture that the Shaykh gave, حفظه. This is 10 years old, ya ikhwan. This is 10 years old. This was when the fitnah of Abul-Hasan al-Ma'ribi, in the early part of the 2000s, 2002, 2003, the Shaykh gave this lecture back in those days, and it's a very, very beneficial question and answer session. So it's called Jinayatu Tamayyu ala al-Manhaj Salafi. The crime of Tamayyu. This word Tamayyu, it's a word really used to describe the principles and the behavior and the way followed by those political jama'at, those political groups, those who do not love and hate for the sake of Allah, those who do not make allegiance and disloyalty for the sake of Allah, as we mentioned yesterday. Rather, they have an aql, they have an intellect which is ma'ishi, nifaqi, makhdhul. It is an intellect that only thinks of the worldly benefits. It's not based upon love of Allah, hate of Allah, and so on and so forth. So these political groups, they've come along and they have watered down, if not demolished, those principles that help to protect Islam. So this is the crime of Tamayyu upon the Salafi manhaj. And so the first question posed to the Shaykh, حفظه ta'ala, is the first question connects to some of those people who water down the Salafi manhaj. And when you advise such a person and you tell him, do not sit with the various groups and parties like Ikhwanul Muslimin and Jama'atul Tabligh, then such a person, he comes and he brings an argument. His argument is that this is the manhaj of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, that he would sit with everybody, he would sit with every faction and group. So in other words, this person is using this as a counter argument. If Shaykh ibn Baz can sit with everybody, with the Tablighis, with the Ikhwanis, with so and so, then this is his manhaj. What's wrong with me doing the same thing? Okay, so what is the answer to this doubt? The Shaykh says, after praising Allah and testifying that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and witnessing that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his servant and messenger, he says, the answer to this question requires that we first clarify a number of issues. The first issue is that the father and the Imam, the Athari, the Allama, Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala, he is a skilled, deeply rooted Imam and a strong Imam. He is deeply rooted in manhaj in a very, very deep and strong way. And because of that, because he is someone who is deeply rooted in the Salafi manhaj and in knowledge, in Sharia knowledge, and because he stands up for the truth, then we find that in the hearts of the people there is a type of hayba. Hayba meaning that the people hold him in awe. This is how this Imam was. That the people would hold him in awe. They would respect him. And even the people of bid'ah would respect him as well. This was the acceptance placed for this great and lofty Imam. So the Shaykh says that even the Ahlul-Bid'ah, along with the people of the Sunnah, would actually respect him and would hold him in awe. This is the first thing that we should realize, which is unique to the likes of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. The second thing that we realize about the Shaykh was that the Shaykh was someone who would actually stand for the truth, and he would speak the truth, and he would not fear the blame of anybody. Rather, he would speak the truth, but he would speak it with wisdom, with hikmah, and by admonishing in the best way. This was from the way of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. The third way is that the third point the Shaykh mentions is that whoever sat with the Shaykh rahimahullah and who spent time sitting with him, he would have knowledge about the way of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. And he would realize that Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz rahimahullah, that he would correct and criticize the opposers, those who oppose and those who erred, with their names in front of the people. This was from his way. And he would say, for example, and then the Shaykh is quoting about Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz that what has come from him is that he would say in a gathering, O so-and-so, ya fulan, uskut, fa innaka fattan. He would say, O so-and-so, be silent because you are someone who puts the people to trial. You are a fattan. And he would say to other people, هذا ليس بصحيح الصواب كذا. He would say straight, this is not correct. This is what is correct. And so we see that whoever spent time with the Shaykh would see that this was a quality of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, that he would not remain silent upon falsehood. And he would point it out and correct it whenever he would come across it. And for that reason, from all of these points together, we realize that the Shaykh, that whoever is a just person, whoever is a truthful person, and he realizes these points about Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, he will realize that the Shaykh would never ever sit with the people of desires with a sitting that was devoid of advice and devoid of correction and devoid of criticism. No. Rather, sometimes he would criticize with quwwah and shiddah, and sometimes he would do it in a different way depending upon what the situation required. And so we see from the Shaykh and the Imam, what do we see? We see at-Tamayyuz. At-Tamayyuz. We see distinction. We see separation. We see him making tamyeez between the haqq and the batil. This was how he would sit with people because of his status and his position. And this, the Shaykh says, is very clear and apparent from his seerah. When you read his biography and you read these things about him, this is what becomes clear from Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. So the Shaykh says this is the manhaj of Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz. As for the one who says that the Shaykh would sit with everybody, with the tabligh, with the ikhwan, with so-and-so and so-and-so, he says this is not to be taken absolutely. This is not correct. Yes, it is true that the Shaykh would sometimes sit with certain groups of people, but he would speak the truth. And then the Shaykh says, and he mentions an important point here, he says, وَالشَّيْخ رحمه الله تعالى هو إمام مقصود من جميع الناس ليس من داخل المملكة العربية السعودية التي هي بلده فقط بل من جميع أنحاء الأرض فالمسلمون كلهم يقصدونه. To the end of what he says, the point he's making is that Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz is an imam who is sought out by the people. We see many, to add to what the Shaykh mentioned here, that many of the people who heard of Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz from the various countries, they heard of his piety, they heard of his charity he would give. He would take his salary and take away a portion of that salary, and whenever people would come to him and ask that, oh Shaykh, so-and-so is ill, my father is ill, oh Shaykh, so-and-so, whatever, people would write him letters from other countries asking for help, and he would give his money to them. So when the people came to know this of Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, many of the people who might have been upon bid'ah, the average common people, they would seek out Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz because they knew him for his piety and his taqwa. And this gives the Shaykh a special and lofty status in this regard. He is sought out by the people. And so the Shaykh, because of his position, he would go out and he would, it's true that he would sometimes sit in certain gatherings, but he would speak the truth. And that was the motive for the Shaykh going and sitting in those gatherings, to speak the truth, to make tamyeez, to clarify the truth. And so the Shaykh then says that since this was the case for Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, then he says, فَلَا بُدَّ أَن تَكُونَ لَهُ سِيَاسَةٌ مُعَيَّنَةٌ. That therefore the Shaykh needed a particular type of way of dealing with the people because of his unique position, and in how to deal and treat the problems that the people were facing. So this is the first thing. The second thing the Shaykh says, or he adds to this, is that we find that the Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, he was the same person who authored or who sanctioned the detention and imprisonment of certain people who were creating corruption in the land of Saudi Arabia. Meaning here the Qutbiyyeen, Safar al-Hawali, Salman al-Awda, these people who were trying to incite the Muslims in Saudi Arabia to make a revolution. They were tearing them away from the scholars, belittling the scholars. Abdul Aziz bin Baz, he was the one who sanctioned that they be prisoned and detained. So how does this, all of this refutes this claim. And so the Shaykh goes on to clarify this and demolish this argument. And so this is the first shubha, or the first argument that we should be aware of, that these people come and they bring the likes of these arguments and these doubts. Then the Shaykh further on, he says that the people of knowledge in history, they have advised us to keep away from the people of innovation and misguidance. He brings some narrations. First narration is from Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, who said, listen to Ibn Abbas, he said, "By Allah, I do not think that anyone loves that I should die today more than shaitan." Meaning that shaitan loves that I should die, meaning Ibn Abbas, that this is the thing that he loves the most, that I die today. So it was said to him, فَقِيلَ وَكَيْفَ, how do you mean? What do you mean by this? And listen to what Ibn Abbas said. He said, تحدث البدعة في المشرق أو المغرب, that an innovation is introduced in the east or the west, and then a man, he brings it to me, and then when it comes to me, قَمَعْتُهَا بِالسُّنَّةِ, then I destroy it with the sunnah. So for that reason, Ibn Abbas is saying that there is no one whom shaitan would love more to perish today than me. How has the Shaykh used this as a proof? How has Shaykh Ubaid used this narration as a proof? He's used it as a proof to show that, look at Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas was from the deeply rooted and deeply grounded knowledge, scholars from the Sahaba. And look at what he said. He said, if falsehood and bid'ah comes to me, I will destroy it with the sunnah. And the Shaykh is indicating to us by mentioning this narration that this is how we see Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz rahimahullah ta'ala. So this is refuting the doubt of that person, that the Shaykh would sit with the Tabligh, sit with the Ikhwan. No, ya Ikhwan. Did he sit with them to drink tea and coffee? Did he sit with them to enjoy the company? No. He went to call the people to the truth and to clarify the truth. And then the Shaykh, he brings a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, al-mar'u ala dini khalilihi falyanzur ahadukum ila man yukhalil, which is the title of this conference. A man is upon the deen of his friend, so let one of you look at the one whom he befriends. And so he says that when all of this is established, then you should know that those people who sit with the people of misguidance, they are of different categories. Right. So in other words, now, when we look at those people who are mixing with the people of innovation, they are of different categories. He mentions 4 of them altogether. So he says the first group of those people who we find mixing with the people of desires, the Ikhwan, the Tabligh, the Hizbiyyeen, the Harakiyyin, and other than them, he says the first of those people who we find go and they mix, then the first of them is an Imam, a strong Imam. He is someone who stands for the truth, and those people fear him. He goes to them and he clarifies the truth. So he goes for a maslahah, he goes for a benefit, for a beneficial interest. He goes to weaken them, to remove their strength, or to belittle their evil, to make their little less. An example of this is Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, and he is a pure, hardcore Salafi. This is the first type of person who may mix, we find mixing with those people. This is an Imam. The second type of person that mixes, someone who is a Salafi. He is Salim, meaning that he is sound in and of himself. He's upon Salafiyyah, but he doesn't have the furqan. He does not have the criterion. He doesn't have the ability to distinguish between the truth and the falsehood. He might call to the Sunnah. He knows how to call to the Sunnah. He knows how to call to Tawheed. He knows how to clarify issues of belief. But he doesn't have a furqan. He doesn't have that deeply rooted knowledge of evil. He's not familiar with the shubuhat. He can't clarify the doubts. Right? So he has some knowledge, but he has some deficiency. This type of person, the Shaykh says that such a person is that when he, when he mixes with these people, then we should not be harsh upon him, but we should advise him nicely, and we should, try to have gentleness with such people and advise them, and we shouldn't be harsh with them and push him away completely. This type of person. I mean, this person, he has some good, and he's mixing with those people of desires. We see that there might be some harm for him because he's not really properly grounded. And so we try to advise him with gentleness and softness, and we advise him not to mix with those people, because he's not really grounded. Okay, so we have a certain way of behaving with this particular individual because we fear for him. This is a second type of person that we find that might be mixing with the people of desires. The third person that's mixing with the people of desire is in fact someone who is a mumayyi', someone who doesn't believe in these qawaid. He doesn't believe in these principles of al-wala wal-bara, or he maybe knows them, but he acts in opposition to them. And he takes this, he believes that everyone is correct. This jama'ah is calling to Allah, that jama'ah is calling to Allah. These people have the Salafi aqidah, those people have the Salafi aqidah, even though they might be deviated in issues of manhaj. So he says all of them are the same. So I'll go to this mosque, I'll go to that mosque, I'll go to that mosque. And he takes this course of action. This person then, he is advised. We give this person advice. If he takes the advice, then good, alhamdulillah. If he does not take the advice, then we treat him to be from those people. We treat him to be from those people. Because if that is your company, then indeed you are from them. Exactly as the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, al-mar'u ala dini khalilih. The man is upon the deen of his friend. So we implement that principle and we treat him to be from those people. This is the third type of person. The fourth type of person is the one who mixes with those people, the people of innovation and deviation. But he goes one step further. He actually starts defending them. Remember the first person? He simply said, everyone's upon the truth. This is a shubha he has in his mind. He's jahil. He says, everyone's upon the truth. This person is actually defending them. He mixes with them. He goes to their masajid. He might even come to our masajid. He goes to those people and then he defends those people as well. So now he puts up a defense. And he wants to increase their numbers as well. So all of this, and at the same time you see this person, he being very harsh against the Salafiyyeen. He speaks ill of their scholars. He speaks ill of the students of knowledge. He warns from the gatherings in their masajid. Right? This person, he is a Hizbi muhtariq. He is a blazing Hizbi. He is a Hizbi. He is someone who is upon that misguidance. And then the fifth person, the Shaykh says, now pay attention to this tafsil. And this shows you the insight of scholars like Shaykh Ubaid, al-Jabiri, حفظه. Look at all of the tafsilat he is giving. This is what we should be benefiting from. The fifth person now, he says the one who is a Salafi. This one is a Salafi. And he sees from his understanding that he should mix with those people in order to establish the proof. He wants to make iqamatul hujjah. He wants to establish the proof against them. And he says that we find that some of the mashayikh, we find amongst them those who do this. And they might go and visit some of the jama'at. They might attend, for example, a lecture that they've invited him for. And, they might go and visit them. And they want to establish the truth in their venue, in their location, in their masjid, in their center, whatever else it is. And they want to establish the proof. The Shaykh says, in my opinion, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this way. Even though some of the mashayikh might choose this way. He says, I personally do not agree with it. And he says the reason is because that people who do this, we should really advise them and tell them to really leave this way. But as long as these people who hold this view are with us, we don't try to cut them off from us. And he says the reason why we do not agree with this approach is that when an alim like this, or when a sheikh goes to the venues of those people, even though he is going to clarify the truth, the perception of the people is that if this sheikh is going to that masjid must be okay, they must be Salafi. They must be Salafi, therefore they must be okay. This is the perception that the general people will have of a sheikh going to the likes of these venues, of these people who have something of deviation, misguidance and opposition to the sunnah. So the sheikh is saying, this to me is khilaf al-awla. It's opposed to what is more befitting. And the sheikh says that, this only increases their numbers, and this is not something that we really agree with. And the Hizbiyyeen, they actually use this. They deliberately invite scholars like this in order to increase their own numbers. So we see, ya ikhwan, here there are 5 categories of people, right? We distinguish between all of them. We don't treat them all the same. Whereas the one who is using the shubha, the person who asked the question, he's just using the shubha. Ibn Baz sat with everybody. Why can't I sit with everybody? Do you have the knowledge of Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz? Do you have the understanding of Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz? Do you have the hayba, the awe that is held for Shaykh Ibn Baz? Of course you don't. Miskeen, you don't have that. How can you even use such a fickle argument? It's batil. So we distinguish between all of these groups of people, as the Shaykh mentioned. The Imam, who is deeply rooted, who has a position in the hearts of the people. He can do things that other people cannot do. And these are few in number and rare in number. Then we have those, as the Shaykh mentioned, the one who is Salafi. He has something of the truth, but not, he doesn't have a furqan. There is danger for this person. We advise him to leave this way. Don't mix with those people for that reason. There's danger in it for you. Okay, we don't cut him off because he's our brother. And then the third person, the one who says everyone is upon the truth, we advise him. If he doesn't listen to the advice, then we treat him to be from amongst, he's amongst them. Then the fourth one, who mixes with those people and he defends them, and he speaks ill of the Salafiyyeen. And the fifth one are those mashayikh who go and they attend and they give lectures for some of the people of the Hizbiyyah, and they claim and they say that this is what we are doing. So we say that this is something that really you shouldn't do. It's not befitting, and we don't really agree with it. And so these are the 5 categories. Second question is that some of the people claim and they say that we should encourage the students to seek knowledge, and we shouldn't speak about these issues of refutations and misguidance and deviation, because when we encourage the people to seek knowledge, that knowledge in turn will allow them to distinguish between truth and falsehood. Do you understand? In other words, we are saying that we should spend our time telling the people, go and seek knowledge of the truth. And we shouldn't engage them in telling them in detail what is batil, what is falsehood. This is the shubha. This is the doubt. This is the issue. So the Shaykh says, and again this is a great answer with tafsil. The Shaykh says that the affair with me is not to be said in a general way like this, meaning in the question. It's not alal itlaq. Rather, when we look at the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knowledge of the sunnah, the Shaykh says that the whole of the deen of Allah, it comprises knowing the sunnah and calling to acting by the sunnah. And likewise, warning from innovation and warning from the people of innovation. He says that if we were to apply what is in this question, if we were to implement what's in this question, meaning that, for example, now today, if I said to you, Ya Ikhwan, learn Tawheed and the categories of Tawheed, and learn, for example, what is Iman, learn the names and attributes, learn the issue of Al-Qadr, learn all of the details in these issues, but forget falsehood. Don't bother speaking about the Qadariyah, who are the Qadariyah, or the Jahmiyah, or the Mu'tazila. Don't go into all those detailed things. Just leave all that. Just learn what is the truth, and through that you yourself will know the errors of the Jahmiyah and the Mu'tazila. This way of thinking, the Shaykh says that if we were to nurture the people upon this way of thinking, then the Shaykh says that this will lead to generations that will be produced in generations to come who will not have any criterion. They will not have any criterion. They will not have any criterion regarding the manhaj. He says that this is what will be the evil effect of this way if we were to do that. And in fact, this reminds me of the statement of Umar bin al-Khattab at this point, who said that indeed the handholds of Islam will be demolished when a people are born and raised in Islam who never knew anything about Jahiliyyah. You've probably heard this statement before. This statement, what Umar said, is the same thing that the Shaykh is alluding to here, right now. That if we see people born in Islam, never knew what Jahiliyyah was, what were the traits of Jahiliyyah, then this will lead to the handholds of Islam being broken. Same thing here. That if we were to nurture the people just upon what is the haqq by itself and not what is batil, then these people would be misguided, in generations to come. They wouldn't have any criterion. So the Shaykh says that the Prophet ﷺ, when Allah sent him, from the point that Allah sent him as a messenger, up until he passed away, he would establish Tawheed. He would call to Tawheed. He would encourage the people upon Tawheed. And he would teach them the obligations of the religion, both those obligations which are the practical obligations like prayer and fasting and zakah and hajj and so on and so forth. And likewise, the types of dealings that the people needed to have between each other. He would teach them all those things. Just at the same time, he would warn from shirk and all of the acts of disobedience and all of the innovations and the newly invented affairs. He says this is the model, the uswatun hasana. This is the good model that we follow. This is the correct manhaj. And this is what is preserved from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from the authentic narrations. And then he mentions the hadith of Abdurrahman bin Abd Rabbi al-Ka'bah, from Abdullah bin Umar bin al-As, Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As, radiyallahu anhuma, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, إِنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ نَبِيٌّ قَبْلِي قَطْ إِلَّا كَانَ حَقًّا عَلَيْهِ أَنْ يَدُلَّ أُمَّتَهُ عَلَى خَيْرِ مَا يَعْلَمُهُ لَهُمْ وَأَنْ يُنذِرَهُمْ شَرَّ مَا يَعْلَمُهُ لَهُمْ. Indeed, there was never a prophet before me, except that it was a duty upon him to direct his ummah to every good he knew for them and to warn them from every evil he knew for them. This hadith demolishes that methodology mentioned in the question, because it was a duty of the Messenger of Allah to tell them everything that is the truth and to explain to them everything that is falsehood and misguidance. And so the Shaykh says another hadith that we can use to refute the same argument in the question is the hadith of the splitting of the ummah, that this ummah will split into 73 sects, all of them in the fire except for one, which is the jama'ah. And Ibn Mas'ud explained that the jama'ah is whatever agrees with the truth, even if you are alone. If you are alone and you're upon the truth, you are the jama'ah. And then the Shaykh says, in another narration we see, man kana ala mithli ma ana alayhi al-yawm wa ashabi, whoever is upon what I and my companions are upon. And then the Shaykh goes on to mention that we see that many examples from the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, where he would warn from the Dajjal to such a degree that the companions would fear that he was in the palm trees nearby. This is how he would warn from evil. And likewise, he would state about the various sects and the groups, he warned from them. And likewise, he would warn from those people from sins, certain types of sins, even though those sins hadn't even existed yet. As an example, he said that there are two groups of people who will be in the fire which I have not seen. A people who have whips like the tails of cows, and women who are, they appear to be naked and they walk in a certain way, and on their heads there are the humps of camels. So we see that the Messenger said, I have not seen this yet, but this is to come in the future. And so from all of these examples, the Shaykh is saying that we are certain of the fact that this claim in the question is not correct. Rather, a teacher and a Shaykh, he will teach his student the Sunnah, he will teach him Tawheed, and all of the obligations, the Fara'id, and the rulings of the Sharia, and the Mu'amala, just as he will warn him from all of the acts of disobedience, and Shirk, and Bid'ah, and so on and so forth. This is how the Alim, this is how he should nurture his student, and this is how it should be. And the Shaykh then goes on to say that unfortunately today we find that when we go out in the field and we look in the field of da'wah, or generally amongst the Muslimin, we see that it is thunderous, meaning that it is like, it's like waves. It's not an easy environment to be in. This is just how the reality is, in the sense that we have all sorts of sin, disobedience, innovation, misguidance. This is what we are living in. This is how the reality of the situation is. And so we see that the people of innovation are in every place. In every house, you will find some issue. In every household, you will find there is a Sufi, someone affected by the Rafida, someone upon takfir, someone upon this, someone about. In every household, you will see that this is how the reality is. And so the Shaykh says, so therefore, those people who are in a position of direction, advice, teaching, they have to explain the truth to the people with its evidence. And that they explain innovation and warn from innovation. Because the environment is, the Shaykh says, it is rotten. It is a rotten environment. It is a decayed environment. It is a spoiled environment. This is how it is. Even though the Shaykh says, Alhamdulillah, there are people of the truth, there are no doubt there are people of the truth, there are mashayikh calling to the truth, but in general, it is a rotten environment. There are statements spread, actions which are spread. So when this is the case, if we were to leave the people according to how the one in the question said, then the affairs will become confusing, there will be no furqan, and this will lead to falsehood. So the Shaykh then finally says that, look, this is the way of these people. They bring all of these general statements. All of these are generalized statements. There's ambiguity. This is how they mislead people with these principles, and so on and so forth. Finally, he finishes with a well-known famous statement from Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. He says that Ibn Abdul Barr, he brings in his book Tamheed, that Wahab bin Kaysan used to sit, that Imam Malik said that Wahab bin Kaysan used to sit with us, and he would never ever stand until after he had said, اعلموا أنه لن يصلح آخر هذا الأمر إلا ما أصلح أوله. That indeed this affair will not be rectified except what rectified the early part. You know this statement from Imam Malik. And so Asbagh said to Malik, what does he mean by this? And Imam Malik said, Yurid badi uddin aw taqwa. He means by this the beginning part of the religion, or taqwa. So the Shaykh has brought this statement from Imam Malik to indicate that rectification of the ummah is in accordance with what rectified the ummah at the very beginning, which is what the Messenger brought of calling to Tawheed and the Sunnah and warning from Shirk and Bid'ah. Both of those things together. So when we give tarbiyah to the Muslimin and we teach them, then we call to these two things together. We don't separate them. Third question from the Shaykh is that some of the people come along and they start speaking in the serious and grave issues, and they oppose the major scholars who have knowledge, detailed knowledge in these issues, and they bring the claim and they say that we are not forced to follow anyone from the people. No one can force us to follow anybody. So what do you say regarding this shubha? What do you say regarding this issue? Meaning someone comes along and he says, I'm not obliged to follow this sheikh and that sheikh and that sheikh. What is the answer to this? The Shaykh says we have to first of all explain a number of issues. The first of them is that, first of all, is that we remind the people with the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he mentions the ayah in the Quran. وَإِذَا جَاءَهُمْ أَمْرٌ مِّنَ الْأَمْنِ أَوِ الْخَوْفِ عَذَاءُوا بِهِ وَلَوْ رَدُّوهُ إِلَى الرَّسُولِ وَإِلَى أُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْهُمْ لَعَلِمَهُ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَنبِطُونَهُ مِنْهُمْ وَلَوْلَا فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَتُهُ لَاتَّبَعْتُمُ الشَّيْطَانَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That when an affair of public safety or fear comes to them, then they spread it amongst the people. But if they had returned it back to the messenger and to those in charge of the affairs, then the proper investigators amongst them would have known, would have looked into it. And had it not been for the favor of Allah and His mercy, then most of you would have followed shaitan, except a very small number. This ayah is the famous ayah used by the scholars to indicate that whenever there are grave and serious issues which affect the Muslims, affect the safety of the Muslims, or the public security of the Muslims, and issues which affect them in their deen and their dunya, that it has to be returned to the Messenger of Allah in his lifetime, when he's alive, and to the people of knowledge, after him. And so, once we understand this ayah, then we see that we refer back to the Messenger of Allah, or we refer back to the people of knowledge. And this is either the rulers or the scholars who are in a position to speak about these affairs and who are in charge of the people's affairs. Okay, now, the Shaykh brings a narration from Umar radiallahu anhu, who said that the Messenger of Allah, it was spread about the Messenger of Allah that he had divorced his wives. So this news was spread amongst the people. So Umar came and he said, I came to the Prophet ﷺ, and I said, O Messenger of Allah, have you divorced your wives? And so the Messenger of Allah said, he said, La, no. So then Umar radiallahu anhu, when this ayah was revealed, and Umar bin al-Khattab, he said, Ana min alladhina yastanbitunahu. Ana min alladhina yastanbitunahu. So he's saying that I am the one who is mentioned in the ayah, because I am the one who is the proper investigator. I came and I investigated. Okay, so the Shaykh is mentioning this as a first point in response to the doubt. The second doubt is that when a person says we're not obliged and forced to follow anybody or make ittiba of anybody, the Shaykh says, yes, this is true. We're not obliged to follow anybody. However, this statement is mujmal. This is general, it's ambiguous. It can be correct and it can be false. Rather, what is correct is not that we follow an individual, but we follow the evidence that the individual brings. Right? This is how it should be stated. So how it should be stated is that when an individual brings evidence, we are forced to follow that person or that sheikh or that alim. This is how it should really be said. But we see that the people of Hizbiyyah, people of deviation, they always bring things and they present it in a general sense. And in a general sense, there's maybe some truth in it. I'm not forced to follow anybody. This is true, you're not forced to follow anybody. This is true. But it's general, mujmal, and by this they misguide the people. So the Shaykh says that the truth is that consideration is given to the evidence. Whoever brings the evidence, then you are obliged to follow that evidence when he brings it. So then the Shaykh says that when we refer the issue back to Allah and His Messenger and to the people of knowledge, then we present things by way of evidence. And then the Shaykh goes on to say that we go back to the people of sound knowledge, sound aqidah, sound manhaj. And when they speak with the truth and with evidence, then it is obligatory to follow them, especially when they warn against a man who's deviated or in whose manhaj there is corruption, and so on and so forth. So therefore, this statement is batil, the Shaykh says, and corrupt. Fourth question is that when there is a man whose condition is not known. We don't know anything about him. And is it permissible to ask about his condition, or is it not permissible to ask about his condition? Meaning someone comes along, maybe he's coming to give da'wah, give lectures, we don't know who he is, what he is, his condition is not known. How do we behave in this situation? The Shaykh says there is no doubt that in every age and in every place there will be people coming to you, and you will not know about these people, and this person is not known. And if this person was someone who he doesn't speak openly, he doesn't manifest opposition to the Sunnah or whatever, and nothing really is known from him, but he's not known at the same time, then he says we just leave him mastur. We leave him as he is. But if there is a doubt, a question mark now arises, there's a question mark, and there's some doubt, and the people have doubt about his condition, or they want something from him in the worldly affairs, in the religious affairs, they want something, then they must examine his condition. Now they must examine his condition when there is a need from him, meaning in the dunyawi sense or in a religious sense. Now they must make ikhtibar of his hal. He says a proof for this, and he brings the hadith of Muawiyah bin al-Hakam and the slave girl, when this companion radiallahu anh, he had a slave girl, and a wolf came and took one of the sheep, and so he slapped her, and then he regretted this, and he felt remorse over this. He went to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, informed him what happened, and then the Messenger of Allah, he said, bring her to me. So he brought the slave girl to the Messenger, and he said, Ayn Allah, where is Allah? And she said, Fis sama. Then he said, Man ana, who am I? And she said, you are the Messenger of Allah. He said, free her, for indeed she is a believer. So this is an evidence to show that to examine someone when there is a need to examine them, that this is a proof for that. And for that reason, the Shaykh says, we see that the people of the Sunnah, in what has passed, they would test the people of every city by way of a person of the Sunnah in that city. So they would say, Imtahinu Ahl al-Madina bi-Malik. Test the people of Medina with Imam Malik. And test the people of Sham with al-Awza'i. And test the people of Egypt with al-Layth bin Sa'ad. And test the people of Mosul with Mu'afi bin Imran. Okay, so they would say, if you want to know who's a person of the Sunnah in Egypt, in Misr, test them with Layth bin Sa'ad. What do you say about Layth bin Sa'ad? And likewise in every region. And there are many other narrations which are like this. So the Shaykh says, a person therefore is to be examined when a question mark is raised, when there is a doubt raised. And so he is to be questioned. Or when someone needs something of the affairs from him. He says this policy is something that no one can do without. No Muslim can do without this policy. And he says, for example, even in the dealings between the people, if a man was to come and he was to ask for the hand in marriage of someone's daughter, and they want to know, they would want to know, well, who is he, and what is his characters, and what is his deen, and what is his khuluq, and so on and so forth. No one would say, well, take my daughter in marriage. This is mad. And so it shows that this principle, every single person is in need of it. And this is why, in reality, it's hypocritical for these people, the Hizbiyyeen, when they come and they speak about imtihan, this is bid'ah, and this is bid'ah, and this is bid'ah. They say the likes of these affairs. Yet if you were to say one of these people, that, Ya akhi, do you have a daughter? He says, yeah, I have a daughter. We'll say, look, I know some person in such and such town, would you give your daughter in marriage to him? And you know nothing about him. A person wouldn't accept this. His aql wouldn't accept this. And likewise, if a person came wanting to do trade with somebody, do business with me, you know nothing about him, would this person accept this without examining, see, is he truthful, is he honest, does he have a track record, does he have history? Of course not. So every single person is in need of making imtihan, of investigating to some degree or another. And so in the affairs of the religion, it is no different. It is no different. And this is from the Sunnah, that where a question mark is raised, or when there is a need, then this is something that we resort to, especially when someone is, coming and calling he's a caller, he's teaching, whatever else, then this is something that we resort to. Finally, the Shaykh finishes with a shubha. He says that from all of this discussion that we've made now, you will realize the falsehood of the statement, al-aslu fil muslimi al-adala. The asl of a Muslim, the foundation of a Muslim, is that we treat him to have integrity. That to be have adl, integrity. This is a principle that some people say, al-asl fil muslim al-adala. And the Shaykh says this is batila, and the books of al-Jarh wa ta'dil are a witness to what we said. Because the base rule regarding Muslims isn't that they are upon adala, that they are trustworthy, truthful, have integrity. No. The base rule, as Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentions, is that mankind is dhaluman jahula. That the base rule regarding mankind is that they are ignorant and oppressive. This is a shubha that Ibn Taymiyyah refutes, but this is how the Shaykh ends this question. Question number 5. When a person is forced and compelled to quote from the books of the people of knowledge, what are the Sharia guidelines that we follow when we quote things from different types of books? Right. Because there are many books which are authored, and many different types of authors. There are authors who are people of bid'ah, but they have good books. There are authors who are people of the sunnah, but their books have mistakes. Right? So this question is asking, how do we deal in quoting and using these various different types of books? This is a very, very good question. And the Shaykh says, the books of the people of knowledge, if they are those who are from the people of the sunnah, then there's no harm in the likes of these books, of course. We quote from these books. However, when we quote from these books, when we use books to quote from the people of knowledge, make sure that we present the quotations in a way that the people listening can understand, that they can grasp what is being said. And they choose the easy quotations from the books to present to the people, and in accordance with what is needed according to the situation. But as for when the books are quoted from the people of bid'ah, from the people of innovation, then there are different scenarios and situations. They are not all to be treated the same. And then the Shaykh says that the people of knowledge have divided the books of the innovators into 3 categories. 3 categories. The books of the innovators. He says the first type is those books which are pure innovation. They are pure misguidance. Everything in them is misguidance. Or maybe there's just like a small amount of the sunnah, but overwhelmingly it is bid'ah. He says these types of books are not to be looked at all. Not permissible for the average Muslim to look at all in these books. And if a person who is an alim, a rooted alim, he wants to look into these books to refute them. So he says that in this book is such and such, or batil, and he wants to refute them. This is for the alim to do this. And he gives examples of these types of books. The book Al-Kafi of the Rafidi Shia, and the book Usul al-Kafi again from the Shia. These are books which are pure misguidance. And likewise we could include in this many of the books of the Sufi believers in Wahdatul Wujud and things of this nature. They are written in order to promote misguidance, and overwhelmingly they have misguidance. So a Muslim keeps away from all of these books. The second category is that which is mixed with sunnah and bid'ah. There is sunnah, there is bid'ah. The alim who is mutamakkin, he has grounding, he can distinguish between what is correct and falsehood. He is the one who looks into these issues. He is the one who separates, he reads what is haqq, what is batil. Then only he is the person who can do this. He says that, however, at the same time, this isn't something that a person should engross himself in. Even for the people of knowledge, he shouldn't engross himself in being involved in these types of things. And then he continues and he says that he goes on to give some examples of books which are like this. An example would be al-Zamakhshari, the tafsir of Zamakhshari. Zamakhshari is a Mu'tazili. He wrote a tafsir of the Quran. In this tafsir there are many benefits in terms of language and many other benefits that the scholars can benefit from. But at the same time, there is the bid'ah of the Mu'tazila and distortion of the ayat of the Quran. Right? So these are the types of books. And likewise, the tafsirs of other people from the people of innovation, there's some benefit, some sunnah, likewise there's some bid'ah. But those books haven't been written specifically to propagate an innovation. Right? So the Shaykh says this is an example of the second category of book. And this again is for the scholars to look into these books and to extract the benefits from those books and to distinguish sunnah from the bid'ah. Okay. The third category, the Shaykh says, is books which are authored by the people of bid'ah, but they are completely free from bid'ah. Right? These are books which everything in them is from the sunnah. There's nothing really wrong in these books. He's not using the book to spread his bid'ah and his dalala. And rather his intent is really just to maybe support one of the Islamic sciences, or he's written on a topic in which there's no misguidance or whatever. He says this book doesn't have anything of bid'ah or deviation. The Shaykh says that in this issue the matter is open. He says فَهَذَا الْأَمْرُ فِيهِ وَاسِعٌ. This is a matter that's open, and he gives examples of some books. He gives examples of some books. He says Abu Ghudda is a Sufi. He's a Sufi. But what he did, he took the Sunan of Imam al-Nasa'i. Imam al-Nasa'i, the Sunan of Imam al-Nasa'i, the collection of hadith. And what he did is that he made a tartib of this book. He organized and arranged the ahadith in this book. So basically he did something that's beneficial. It's a beneficial endeavor what he did. Even though he himself is a blazing Sufi, blazing misguided Sufi. But this book in and of itself doesn't have any bid'ah, rather it is something that is of benefit. That is an example of what the Shaykh is speaking of. There are many works, old works, where some of the people of bid'ah have done tahqiq. They've verified the book, they've gone to the manuscripts, they've published the book, they've done some other referencing, whatever. A person can benefit from those types of books. So this is the third category and the third type of book. So this is the tafsil regarding the books of the innovators. The sixth question is, what is the difference between, this is a very good question, what is the difference? ما الفرق في قولهم هذا صاحب بدعة وهذا مبتدئ. What is the difference between saying a person of bid'ah, so and so is a person of bid'ah, and saying so and so is a mubtadi', so and so is an innovator? So what's the distinction? When we say he is a person of innovation, and when we say he is an innovator, what's the distinction? The Shaykh says, in my view, the distinction is very clear, and I will explain it to you. That which we know from the expressions of the people of knowledge and from their way is that when they say mubtadi', when they say about someone he is a mubtadi', they do not apply this label except for the one upon whom the proof has been established. The proof has been established upon him. The haqq has been made clear to him. He's rejected the haqq. Now he is a mubtadi'. The hujjah has been established upon him, and it's become clear that he is a person of misguidance and that he misguides other people. So they say mubtadi'. And he says, in the majority of the cases, this is how it is. They use it to say someone is a mubtadi' who's had the hujjah established upon him. Then he says, as for sahibu bid'atin, when we say a person of innovation, then it's not required that when we apply this label that the proof has been established upon him. No. Rather they say this person is a sahibu bid'ah, meaning that he is someone who is acting or he's carrying a bid'ah. So this is a more general statement. In other words, what the Shaykh is alluding to, that when we say so-and-so is a person of innovation, this does not necessitate tabdi'. Does not necessitate tabdi'. It doesn't mean that we have now expelled a person from the sunnah and declared him to be a misguided innovator. No. We are using this word in a descriptive sense. Descriptive sense. This person has something of innovation with him. He's implementing some innovation. He's a sahibu bid'atin. This term is not the same as Mubtadi. So one implies establishment of the proof, and the other one does not imply establishment of the proof. And since we are on this topic, I would like to make a quick clarification here, that we see that the people of knowledge, they distinguish between someone who is a caller to innovation, someone who's upon a bid'ah, and he goes out, he stands on the chair, on the table, on the minbar, and he calls the people to his misguidance. And on the other hand, we have a person who's upon some bid'ah, but he's not a caller. He doesn't call the people, he doesn't go out in the street, he doesn't invite, he just quiet, keeps himself to himself, and that's what he's upon. Are these two the same? Are these two the same? They're not the same? What have our scholars said? What have the scholars of the past said? Are they the same? Are they the same? No. This is something that is established with the people of hadith. If you read in the books of hadith, you will see they clearly make a distinction between a caller to bid'ah and someone who isn't called to his bid'ah, in terms of accepting his narrations, not accepting his narrations. And the scholars have made this tafsil, Ibn Taymiyyah, and all of the Imams of the Salaf, in fact. Now, I want to read to you the statement of a Shaykh, and I want you to tell me, is this speech correct? The Shaykh says, some of them divide the innovators into the one who calls to his innovation and the one who does not call to his innovation. He says, Batil, wallahi. He says, Batil. And then he swears by Allah, wallahi, this is Batil. And then he says, I swear by Allah, I swear over it that this is Batil. Look at this courage. Look at this bravery he's showing. Batil, wallahi, Batil, wa ahlif alayhi aydan annahu Batil. That I swear this is Batil. Then he says, هذا التقسيم باطل باطل كلام فارغ. This is false distinction. It is empty speech. And then he goes on and he says, he goes on with speech like this. I don't need to read it's lengthy, but you understand, you can see the language that he's using. Do you agree with this, ya ikhwan? Is this correct? Is this correct? Is this acceptable? Whose speech is this? Yahya al-Hajuri. Yahya al-Hajuri. And this is only a small drop in the ocean of misguidance of this fool. This man is a fool. He's been described as a fool. Shaykh Muhammad bin Hadi said this man is a safih. He is a fool. Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri said he is a safih. He is a fool, Mubtadi. This man, this is a whole book on the misguidance of this man. And this is just, as I said, a small drop in the ocean of misguidance of this man. Our scholars, they distinguish between the one who calls to innovation and the one who does not call to innovation. Our scholars, they have these tafsilat because they are rooted in knowledge. This man is not rooted in knowledge. This man is rooted in harshness, foul language, severity, lying, deception, and so many other evil traits that that he has made apparent. So as we were on that particular point that the Shaykh clarified, it was worthy that we clarify that as well. The seventh question, inshallah, we'll come to a close shortly. The seventh question is regarding the issue of advising a person. A person, he says that I'm advising the ikhwan, I'm advising the tabligh, I'm advising these people, and he spends years and years and years and years in advising these people. So what is, and then he sits with them giving them advice, and it's taking him years. So what is the advice? Is this the way that the Salaf were upon? Is this the way of the Salaf? And so the Shaykh responds, Al-munasahatu la budda an tantahi ila shay. He says, giving advice has to come to some conclusion. There has to be an end to this issue of giving advice. It can't be something that just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. It has to end and come to a conclusion. There has to be an outcome. He says it is either two things. Either the one advised, he accepts the advice and turns back to the truth, and then he follows the sabilul mu'mineen, he follows the path of the believers, and he adopts the sunnah. This is only one outcome. And the second outcome is al-inad wal-israr. He persists and he is stubborn. So he says advice must come to a conclusion. He says this affair isn't something that needs a great deal of time. Rather, in just a few sittings, the conclusion can be reached. In a few sittings. And in most cases, he says, the only time in which it is allowed to prolong the advice, which is in very rare situations, which is where we have a person who is consumed in shubuhat. He is genuinely in the dark. And maybe we are close to him, there's some closeness that we have with him, and we want to show him some gentleness and softness and whatever. And so we engage with him, we give him some time, some space and whatever. In this type of situation, yes. But in most cases, this is not the case. And then he says, as for sitting with the people of innovation and, mixing with them and, persisting upon this, this is not from the way of the people of the Salaf, and we do not know this to be from the way up until this time of ours. And we conclude just with reading some narrations that is connected to this point, because this is a disease that we see some people suffering from who ascribe to the way of the Salaf. It's a disease. They say that I am upon the aqeedah of the Salaf, I am upon the manhaj of the Salaf. But in his company is only ever the people of innovation, people upon Hizbiyyah. And his advice is, his excuse is what? I'm advising them. And he's been doing this for 5 years, 3 years, 4 years, 2 years. And we see here the way of the Salaf. As we said, the only exception, the only excuse is when you have someone who is genuinely consumed in shubuhat. You need to spend time with him. That's acceptable. But let's see how the Salaf would behave with the likes of this behavior. Al-Lalaka'i brings a narration from Abdullah bin Amr al-Sarkhusi, the scholar of Al-Khazar. He said, I ate a single meal with an innovator. I ate a meal with a Mubtadi', and it reached Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. And Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak said, I will not speak to him for 30 days. Fahmt? This is the way of the Salaf, meaning. Ibn Waddah al-Qurtubi, he narrates from one of the Salaf. I was walking alongside Amr bin Ubaid al-Mu'tazili, from the heads of the Mu'tazila. And Ibn Awn, one of the Imams of Salaf, he saw me. Then he turned away from me for 2 months. For 2 months. Ibn Abi Hatim narrates from Abdul Aziz al-Uwaisi, who said, when Ismail bin Abi Uwais went out towards Hussein bin Abdullah bin Damira, and it reached Imam Malik, this was a person of deviation, Imam Malik, he boycotted him for 40 days because Malik was not pleased with Hussein. Abu Ja'far Muhammad bin al-Hasan bin Harun al-Mawsili said, I asked Abu Abdullah Ahmad bin Hanbal, I am from the people of Mosul, and the majority of the people in our town are Jahmiyyah. And the affair of Al-Karabisi was a man who raised this issue of the Quran. Is the recitation created, is it not created? He began to raise this issue. Then it reached certain towns. And this fitnah reached the town of Mosul. So Imam Ahmad replied, beware of Al-Karabisi. Because he was from that town. He was in that area. Do not speak to him, and do not speak to whoever speaks to him. You understand? Do not speak to Al-Karabisi, and anyone you see speaking to him, do not speak to him either. So I said to him, this statement, in your view, and whatever branches from it, is all from the saying of the Jahmiyyah? He said, yes, all of this is from the saying of Jahm bin Safwan. Al-Fudail bin Iyyad said, whoever sits with a person of innovation, then beware of him. And whoever sits with a person of innovation has not been given wisdom. Ibrahim bin Maysara, whoever honors an innovator, has aided in the destruction of Islam, and to the end of what has been said. Now there are some other important questions that we haven't managed to complete, inshallah ta'ala, maybe tomorrow. And there are some more questions from the Shaykh that deal with, for example, if you have someone who's upon misguidance in your family, who's your brother, your sister, how do we deal with such a person? There are some important answers like this, inshallah, maybe We will conclude with this as part of tomorrow's lesson. We will conclude here today, inshallah ta'ala, and I hope that we've taken some benefit from the kalam of the Shaykh and see how this relates to the asal that we discussed yesterday of al-wala wal-bara. That if you don't implement these usul that we have learnt, then there is a corruption in your wala and bara. And therefore there is a weakness in your handhold of Islam, because this is your handhold of Islam, because these are the ways through which misguidance comes to you. So with that we conclude. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Inshallah, we're going to continue with where we left off from yesterday's lesson. In yesterday's lesson, we went through some questions and answers from Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri, حفظه ta'ala, regarding how do we behave and how do we interact in different situations as it relates to the people of innovation. And so today we have maybe 6 or 7 more questions to complete on the same topic. And again, the important and key thing that we want to pick out from all of this discussion is certain principles and certain guidelines which guide our behavior, our interaction with people of different categories or people of different types. And so we want to pick up these usul or these principles so that we are not violating that which we mentioned in the first lesson, which is the principle of al-wala wal-bara, and loving and hating for the sake of Allah, and making loyalty and disloyalty for the sake of Allah, and choosing one's friends for the sake of Allah, so that we are acting in accordance with that principle in all of our situations. So the first question today is, the questioner says to the Shaykh, may Allah increase you in your lifespan, what is the ruling on mixing in general, and more specifically sitting with the people of innovation and desires from the Ikhwan and the Tabligh and the Hizbiyyeen, whether they are those who make takfir, because amongst those people of innovation are those who make takfir of other Muslims and of the rulers. So whether they are those who are mukaffirun, they declare other Muslims to be apostates and the rulers and so on and so forth, or whether they don't make takfir of other Muslims. Because there are two types of people of innovation. So the Shaykh, after praising Allah and sending the salat and the salam upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, it is obligatory upon the Sunni that he separates from the people of innovation, he distances himself from them, and that he takes caution from them. This is just a general, broad principle that we begin with. As a general, broad principle. This is an asl, a foundation from the foundations of the Sunnah. That is, from our deen, from our religion. This foundation has its basis in the Quran, in verses from the Quran. There are many verses from which this foundation is established. This principle has its foundation in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this foundation has its basis in the action of the Sahaba and the action of the Salaf. So the Shaykh says that this is a qaida, amma, a general principle regarding the people of innovation, no matter what type they may be, whether they are those who make takfir or those who do not make takfir. However, alongside this general principle that we accept and that we implement, then giving advice to specific individuals from the people of innovation, whether they are ikhwanis or tablighis or sururis, no matter what type of innovation they may be upon, that giving people advice from amongst them is something which from experience has been proven to be beneficial. From experience, it is proven to be beneficial. And the Shaykh says that when we look at sitting with the people of innovation, then there are a number of points, a number of detailed clarifications that we need to make. The first one is that we do not sit with al-Jama'atul Mutamayyiza. Al-Jama'atul Mutamayyiza. What does it mean by this? It means that when we find amongst the people of innovation there is a specific group that distinguishes itself by way of a methodology, or it has a center, or it has a masjid, or it has some distinct element. It, for example, invites speakers, it holds conferences, lectures, it has a distinct methodology, they have books that they rely upon, so there's something clearly distinct about them. This type of jama'ah, then we do not sit with the likes of these people, nor do we mix with them in their centers, in their platforms, in their gatherings. This is to be avoided. The second point that we take from this is that it is permissible to mix with a small number amongst those people who might be affiliated with them, because this through experience has been shown that there are always people who might benefit from sitting with them and advising them and directing them to the truth and directing them to the scholars, the true scholars. So we keep that in mind as well. And then the third thing that the Shaykh mentions is that those who mix or who sit in the types of these sittings, they should not be people who are known and prominent for the Sunnah. Now look at the wisdom here. He says that people who are prominent and known for the Sunnah, they should not be going to the likes of these gatherings or sittings. Why? Because when he sits with them, someone who's known for the Sunnah, known for defending the Sunnah and aiding the people of the Sunnah, then the people of innovation, they use the presence of this man in order to deceive the people and make them think that they, have a standing, that they are legitimate in what they are upon. So the Shaykh says that this should be avoided by people who are well known and prominent in the land for being people of the Sunnah, because this works in the favor of those people. However, if there's a person, someone else, who does not have that open position and stature amongst the people, he's just someone from the people of the Sunnah, then there's no harm. It's permissible for him to go and to mix with them, but only with a limited, restricted type of mixing. He visits them only that he may give the advice, because these things from experience, the Shaykh says, that we have seen that these do benefit and fruits do arise from the likes of this. And so he explains the truth to them, and he persists with them, and if no result arises, then he raises his hand from them and he leaves them and he abandons them. However, he doesn't constantly maintain the relationship with them, as we mentioned in the lesson yesterday, that giving advice has a limit. Advice doesn't continue for years and years and years and years and years. The conclusion can be reached in a few sittings, whether this person wants the truth or whether he doesn't want the truth. So the Shaykh says that he doesn't have this constant relationship with them, rather he uses that limited mixing in order to offer the advice. So either the person accepts the advice or he frees himself from him and abandons his company. So this is the first question. The second question is something that we touched upon yesterday, and this is the questioner says, may Allah be benevolent to you, do we distinguish between boycotting a person of bid'ah who calls to his innovation, the one who is a da'iyah, he calls to his innovation, and the one who does not call to his innovation? And how do we behave with each of these two categories of people? How is our interaction with these two categories of people? So again, the Shaykh answers this by saying that there is no doubt that making a distinction between the two groups is wajib, is obligatory. That we do not equate the two people. One who calls to his innovation by lectures and books and so on and so forth, and one who is just silent. He has no word to say, he's just silent, he doesn't call to his innovation. So the Shaykh says it is wajib to make a distinction between the two. And this is what the scholars of hadith and all of the ulama and the Imams of the Salaf have been upon. We see this principle mentioned in the books of Ibn Taymiyyah and the books of the muhaddithin of the early times, right up until this time of ours. All of the scholars, they make this distinction. And opposing them are the Haddadiyah, those extremists who are not grounded in the principles of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and they oppose the things which Ahlus-Sunnah have agreed upon. And this man that we mentioned yesterday, al-Hajuri, Yahya al-Hajuri, we see him, the whole ummah was agreed, for example, that Uthman bin Affan radiyallahu anhu, that when he introduced the second adhan for Jum'ah, that all of the Sahaba and the ummah after them, and the scholars and Imams after that for a long period in the ummah, that they took this with acceptance. And they took this to be from the sunnah of the Khulafa ar-Rashidun. And so along comes this Hajuri and says that this is a bid'ah, an evil bid'ah. It is the mother of all innovations, and anyone who follows Uthman in that is a Mubtadi. We see many of the Sahaba, they followed Uthman in that. Ali didn't have any problem with that. So he opposes the agreement of the Ummah in this regard. A second example, the scholars of Islam and the Sunnah have stated that there was not a single companion who participated in the killing of Uthman. All of the scholars are agreed upon this. There wasn't a single companion amongst the companions who participated in that fitnah. Along comes al-Hajuri and he says that some of the Sahaba, they participated in the killing of Uthman. This is dhulm, this is oppression, it's ta'an upon the Sahaba. And likewise, this issue, the whole, all of the scholars are agreed that we distinguish between the one who calls to a bid'ah and the one who is silent about his bid'ah. And he opposes this. And this is just 3 examples. There are many other examples, ya ikhwan. So anyway, the Shaykh says it is obligatory to distinguish between the two types, because the one who is silent upon his innovation, he does not call to it, does not spread it, people will not be harmed by him. Rather, his harm is upon himself. He only harms himself. As opposed to the one who calls the people to his bid'ah, he corroborates it, he spreads it amongst the people openly and announces it. This is the one who deserves boycotting. So this hajar, the boycotting, this is the individual that we boycott. And we separate from him and we warn against him. But as for the first one, the one who has innovation but he is not a caller, he is silent, he doesn't say anything, then this person, obviously, we don't just abandon him, we advise him. The behavior with him is that we advise him, we give him advice. But as for the second person, he is to be boycotted. We abandon him, we boycott him, and we warn against him. Now, again, look at the wisdom of the Shaykh, because the answer is still not complete yet. The issue of boycotting the one who calls to his innovation, we have to look at the beneficial interest. We have to look at the maslahah. Because the people of the Sunnah, wherever they live, wherever they are present, we find that they live in different circumstances. So in some cities, the people of the Sunnah may be strong. In some cities, the people of the Sunnah may be weak. And so we have to look at the consequences of taking a certain position of boycotting towards these types of people. The Shaykh says that when we have people of the Sunnah who are strong and they have strength, then this person is to be boycotted. And there's no issue there. And he's to be warned against. However, if the strength is to the people of innovation, for that individual, that person who is a caller to his bid'ah, he has some strength, he has some standing, he has some influence upon the people, he is vocal, he has a reach amongst the people, he can create problems, he can create problems for Ahlus-Sunnah, then in this particular situation, then he is to be boycotted in a partial way, not a complete way. Not like in the first situation where it's complete boycotting and warning. In this case, it is a partial boycotting. And so the way that you behave with him is that you don't warn against him openly, because this is going to bring back harm to you. But rather you refute the mistakes. So whatever his mistakes are, without mentioning his name, he has numerous mistakes. Whatever those mistakes are, then you refute those specific mistakes. And you do not attend his lessons, you do not listen to him, but you do not openly warn against him, because obviously this now will bring hardship upon the people of the Sunnah. So the evidence is used to refute his innovation, his mistake and his error, so that the general people are protected from being misguided. But if a policy of open boycotting was to be shown against him, this individual would incite the general people and specific people against him. He would create tribulation, and the people of innovation in general would then start to transgress against the people of the Sunnah and humiliate them and try to split their ranks and create turmoil amongst them. And so we have a principle in the Sunnah, which is that repelling evil is something that is desired. That repelling evil is something that is desired. And in this situation, the greater evil is the harm that would come to the people of the Sunnah, and for that reason the issue of boycotting is not implemented in the way that it is in the first situation. So the point being that the people of the Sunnah are to use wisdom. They are to use wisdom in whatever they do. So this is the second issue. And the third question, he is asked that when we see that there are gatherings that take place between the people, and in these gatherings the speech isn't really connected to innovation, but they are just general worldly affairs. So discussion of worldly affairs are taking place between people, between Muslims, and there's no connection to do with the religion. What is the ruling on this type of interaction? So the Shaykh, he speaks first of all in the first part of his answer, he's speaking in the context of gatherings between the people of the Sunnah. So in other words, when we meet together, we're not meeting together for a lesson, we're not meeting together in the masjid, but we're just meeting because of a circumstance or a reason. How do we behave? How do we interact in this type of gathering? So in this part of the answer, the Shaykh says, it is desirable between the Muslims in general, and the people of the Sunnah specifically, that whenever they get together, their gatherings should be full of reminding each other in issues of Tawheed and in Sunnah and in fiqh, in matters of jurisprudence, so that the gathering, wherever they may be, is a gathering around which the angels, they are present and they lower their wings. They surround the gathering. And that mercy and tranquility may descend upon them. This is how the gatherings of the people of the Sunnah should be. And as for the worldly gatherings, overwhelmingly we find that they are never free from qeel and qal, this and that, and wasting of time, and these issues which harden a person's heart. So it's desirable for a person of knowledge, a person who is a student of knowledge, that when he sits in a gathering and he gives salam to the various people and he welcomes them and he invites them to listen to some ahadith, he brings some benefits, some fawaid, and he puts every group of people in their proper place, and he teaches them some of the rulings of the religion. This is how a person should be, and make sure that the gathering is blessed. And the Shaykh gives examples of where this might be. For example, you might be present in a walima, you might be present in an aqiqah, you might be present in certain gatherings which tend to take place every now and then. In these kind of situations, a person, a student, he should give them salam, ask for barakah upon them, and he should ask them how they are, and then after this he should, if he sees that they're going to involve themselves in issues and speaking about qeel, waqal, and so on and so forth, then he takes the initiative and he makes them remember Allah, and he should have an expansive chest and try to accommodate them and try to steer the discussion and the direction in which it will be of benefit. This is how a person should be with the people in general. Because amongst them are people of the Sunnah, amongst them are just general people who are just upon whatever they are upon. His aim is to draw them and bring them to guidance, and he should use this way and behaving in his behavior. He should have a certain tact and a way by which he achieves this objective, because the aim is to guide and direct the people. It's not just a matter of we just cut off completely and there's no interaction. No, a person has to be a person in his chest. He has to be expansive and accommodate the people to a degree where he can bring about certain benefit. So the Shaykh, after this, after the questioner then clarifies, are you speaking about sitting with the people of innovation or the people of the Sunnah? So the Shaykh then continues now to explain the interaction with the people of innovation specifically. So he says, when a person of the Sunnah, he has a need that needs to be fulfilled, and it can only be from someone who is a Mubtadi. There's no harm in this. And the Shaykh is alluding here to, for example, he gives some examples where if you need to buy something, you need to do some trade with a person of innovation, you need to sell, you're doing trade, you sell things to the Muslims in general, and it might mean you sell to people of innovation. These are situations that you find yourself in by necessity. So this type of interaction, there is no harm in this, it's permissible, la ba's bihi. But as for when it is a gathering and a meeting which is done with qasd, with intent, it is sought out to sit with them and so on and so forth and spend time with them and speaking with them about general issues, then this is a khata, this is a mistake. This is hadha la yajuz. This is not permissible, because this now comes back to the general rule that we started off at the very beginning. The general rule is to avoid sitting with the people of innovation in general. And then there are tafsilat that come after that. So then the Shaykh just makes a point in general. He says that the people of the Sunnah, they should have a siyasatul hasana, that they should have a good method and way of dealing and interacting with the people. Why? Because the people of the Sunnah are like a white hair on a black ox. A single white hair on a black ox. This is the reality of the people of Sunnah. If you go to every town and every city on this earth, you always find that the people of the Sunnah are very, very few indeed. And because of this, they have to be very, the way that they behave, the way that they interact with the people has to be, they have to have a certain way and a methodology behind which the objective is to draw the people to themselves and not to make the people flee from them. So this is how a person should behave with wisdom, with wisdom, whilst he adheres to these usul. Then the next question the Shaykh is asked, that some brothers are asking, when there is a Salafi who has a relationship, relatives who are upon innovation. For example, he might have a brother or an uncle or a son-in-law or these kind of situations. So how should a Salafi behave in this particular situation? And so the Shaykh replies, هذا موجود ولا شك, no doubt this is present. For indeed there are many houses. You will find the Sunni and Salafi is just one person in that house, and everybody else, or maybe it is a woman or a sister, and everybody else in that household, they are from the people of bid'ah. They are from people in mission. They are affected by misguidance. So again the Shaykh says, فَهَذَا لَا بُدْ أَن تَكُونَ سِيَاسَتَهُ حَسَنَةً, that it's vital for this person, for his behavior and dealing and the way that he handles the situation, that is done in a good and in a good way, and that he instills love, he creates love between himself, and that he endears himself to them, and he, so it's an issue where they are his relatives, and he maintains this relationship with them, and he explains the truth to them out of sincere love and out of purity of intention for them. This is how he should be, because they're his relatives, and he shouldn't turn against them like we see a lion, a ferocious lion turns against his prey, like a lion catches its prey and it's vicious. And this is not how a person should be with his family. whether his brother, his sister, his mother, his father. No, rather it is with love, because he sincerely desires truth for them. And nor should he turn around to them and start making it look, saying to them that you are dullal, you are misguided, so on and so forth, whatever, and I'm the one who's upon haqq and whatever. You shouldn't take this type of behavior and approach. This is not desirable, the Shaykh says. And he says rather he should take every opportunity with his relatives, explain to them until he guides them by Allah's permission. And he has patience upon this, and he does not be hasty. As long as this innovation obviously is an innovation that isn't a very serious type of innovation, he should have patience and strive and ask for Allah, make dua to Allah that Allah guides these people. So the Shaykh says that people from our experience, whether they are the common people or even some amongst the scholars, we found that using wisdom and good behavior, that they benefit from the nasiha. They tend to benefit from the nasiha. But as for when we find someone who is a mu'anid, someone who is a stubborn, willful opposer, then this person, obviously, he has a certain type of behavior that is different to the people who are not like that. Okay, that's the end of that question. The next question the Shaykh is asked, what is the ruling upon a Salafi, a person who is upon the way of the Salaf, who persists in mixing with the people of innovation after having been given advice? So he mixes with the Tabligh and the Ikhwan and other than them. And what is the ruling regarding the one who says, yes, I agree, I accept in the obligation of boycotting them. But the reason which is preventing me is because either, and there's two reasons. Number one, I have a worldly interest from these people. There's some maslahah that I have that causes me to unite with these, to mix with these people. Even though I know that to mix with them is not permissible, but I have a worldly interest. Or the second reason could be that he says, well, I found that Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he has stated that making this type of boycotting is not something that befits our time, because the people of the Sunnah are very few and they are weak. Right? So this individual uses these two excuses. So the Shaykh says, this person, we engage with him. Obviously we engage with him, he's our brother. We aid him, we support him in the truth. And regarding that which is between us, then obviously we give him advice. And we try to, we try to give him advice, we don't separate from him. But as long as he's with us in general, and he strengthens us in our dawah, and he's with us in our manhaj, and he's not actively supporting the people of innovation against us, then such a person, he's with us, we engage with him, we advise him, he's relied upon the fatwa of some of the people of knowledge, and the Shaykh then says, I advise you to go back to a tape of mine where there is further detail on this issue. And the Shaykh is alluding here to the tape that we went through yesterday. The question yesterday. So the answer to this question here goes back to the question that we looked at yesterday. And so to go back to that question, to answer this one, if you remember we said that there are 5 groups of people who mix with the people of innovation. Right? There are 5 groups of people. The first person is a deeply rooted, knowledgeable Imam who is sought out by the people. Not just the people of the Sunnah, but even from the people of the Bid'ah. Like Shaykh Abdul Aziz bin Baz, rahimahullah ta'ala, from our era. Even Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala. There would be people who would come to him. There would be people of Hizb al-Tahrir, Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and other than they would come to him because he's an Imam. And they would come to him, so he would sit with these people and establish the hujjah and speak the truth in no uncertain terms. So the likes of these Imams, they sit, and they sit in open and general gatherings. And there's la bas, because these Imams, the people have an awe for these, they have a respect and veneration for these Imams. And this is unique to the likes of these Imams, the scholars. This is the first type of person. The second type of person is a Salafi who, although he calls to the truth whatever he knows in the various topics, Allah's names and attributes and al-Qadr and Iman and the Sahaba and belief in the unseen and the manhaj in general. So he has this knowledge, but he doesn't have a criterion, a furqan. He doesn't have the deeply rooted knowledge to deal with the shubahat and the doubts that the people of innovation bring, the takfiris and the ikhwanis and other than them. So he's not really, so this type of person, we advise him and we tell him that this is not befitting for you and it's harmful for you. But we don't boycott him and separate from him and whatever else. We just tell him, leave this way because it is harmful to you. The third type of person is one who comes, he mixes with everybody. He goes to this mosque and that mosque and this mosque and that mosque, and he says everybody's upon the truth, everybody's upon the Salafiyyah. This person, we advise him gently and kindly. We have patience with him because he might genuinely be drowned in shubuhat. So we advise him, and at the end of it, either he listens or he doesn't listen. If he listens, well, alhamdulillah. If he doesn't listen, then we treat him to be from amongst them. From amongst them. The fourth person is the one who he goes to the masajid of the people of innovation and he defends them. And he attacks the people of the sunnah. This person, he is from amongst them and we free ourselves from him. And the final person is those from the mashayikh of Ahlus-Sunnah who see a maslaha in going to some of these jama'at and doing lectures for them and so on and so forth. So these mashayikh, Shaykh Ubaid says that we do not agree with what they do because this really, even though there is some benefit in what they do, the greater benefit is to the Hizbiyyeen. The greater benefit is for them and for their da'wah. And so therefore we disagree with this behavior, but obviously these mashayikh, we advise them and we explain our point of view to them. We don't treat them like some of the other categories that we mentioned earlier on. So this answers this particular question that we are discussing here. A Salafi who finds himself in this situation. The next question the Shaykh is asked he's asked to clarify, is the following statement true and correct? And this statement is that al-haqqu yuqbal, that the truth is accepted from any person who says the truth. And falsehood is refuted against anyone who says falsehood. So if a Mubtadi, if an innovator, or even a shaitan, or even a non-Muslim, he says a statement of truth, then it is accepted and it is affirmed. And this is upon the basis of the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. That do not let the hatred of a people make you swerve from justice. Rather be just, because it is closer to taqwa. However, alongside this, it is not permissible. It is not permissible to actually take knowledge from this Mubtadi, the one who spoke the truth, and not to seek the truth from him. Just as is the manhaj of the Salaf, that truth is only sought from the people of truth, who act upon the truth, and they are the people of the Sunnah, not other than them. So the questioner is saying that this statement that has just been made, is it correct? Is it correct? And the Shaykh says, this is a sound and correct principle. That whatever has been mentioned here is a sound and correct principle, inshallah ta'ala, because truth is accepted from whomever says the truth. Whoever comes with the truth, then we accept the truth from him. But this does not mean that everyone who has arrived at the truth, that he is an imam in the truth. Right? There's a difference. Many people speak the truth. Many of the innovators, they speak the truth. That does not make him an imam who is sought for knowledge in matters of the truth. The Shaykh says that a shaitan, the one who taught Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, he taught him Ayatul Kursi. And the messenger said, when Abu Hurairah informed the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told you the truth, وَهُوَ كَذُوب, even though he is a great liar. And likewise, we see in many instances the Jews would come to the Prophet ﷺ and they would say what is in the Torah. They would say, "O Abul Qasim, we find in the Torah that Allah will carry the heavens upon a finger, to the end of the hadith. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would laugh up until his molars would be visible. And so these incidents show that truth, whoever speaks the truth, then it is accepted, no doubt. However, those people who speak the truth, they are of numerous categories. They're not all the same. The first of those who may speak the truth is a person of the Sunnah. An alim from the Sunnah, a person of the Sunnah. So he is from us, we are from him. The second type of person is a person who is a person of bid'ah, person of innovation. He may speak the truth. And the third one is a non-Muslim who may speak the truth. The Shaykh gives these three types of people. And this is from experience. We know that there are many non-Muslims. They write books on Islam, they write books on ahadith, and everything much if not all of what they write is the truth. Is the truth. No, we accept that truth, even if a non-Muslim says that truth. And likewise with many of the people of innovation, they have much of the truth with them. And this is the nature of bid'ah, as our scholars explain. If bid'ah or an innovator had been nothing but pure evil, then nobody would have been put to trial by innovation or by the innovator. No, the innovators have a great deal of truth with them. But this is where the deception lies. They have one false principle which may ruin and destroy a person's deen. Okay? So the point being here then, the Shaykh, in his answer, he says that whoever speaks the truth, that truth is ours. It belongs to us. It is the lost property of a believer. We accept that truth. We don't deny that truth. But as for now, that person becoming someone who is an imam, who is sought, who is made a reference point, who is studied under, and so on and so forth, no. We do not make them as reference points of knowledge and seeking knowledge. Rather, we simply corroborate the truth that is with them, and we take the truth from its people, who are the people of the Sunnah, the Imams of the Sunnah. And so this ends that question. And then the next question is, we can finish on this question inshallah ta'ala, which is a question that there is found in our area, many mosques, in which we find that there are takfiris, the people of takfir, and the people of Hizbiyyah, meaning these extremists. And they invite the people to their falsehood. They call the people to their falsehood. And they confuse the Salafi youth, those Salafi youth who are upon the methodology of tasfiyah and tarbiyah, which is purifying the religion and cultivating the Muslims upon that religion. And so these people, they bring these shubuhat, they bring these doubts. And so from these takfiris, from these extremists, takfiris, there are those who accuse Imam al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala, and likewise Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala, with irja, this innovation of expelling actions from Iman. They accuse these two Imams. And likewise, they claim that the Shaykh Mujahid Rabi' حفظه ta'ala, Shaykh Rabi', they accuse him of lying against Sayyid Qutb. And they also declare the rulers to be disbelievers. And then they use the verse in the Quran, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. They use this ayah, whoever does not judge by what Allah has revealed, they are the disbelievers. They use all of this and they misinterpret this verse, and likewise they call to the manhaj of Sayyid Qutb, this takfiri extremist methodology, and they promote his books and the books of the Qutbiyyeen. So we ask our Shaykh Ubaid al-Jabiri, inshallah, to give us a nasiha, an advice in how to behave with the likes of these people, these takfiris. And how do we stand against them? Perhaps Allah may benefit us, inshallah ta'ala. And then the questioner at the end, he says, فَإِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي قُلُوبِ أَهْلِ سُنَّةِ مِنَّا مَنْزِلَةً رَفِيعَةً. For indeed, you, O Shaykh, you have in our hearts a very lofty position. We ask Allah, al-Hayy al-Qayyum, that He makes you firm upon the truth until death, and that He gives you a good khatimah. So then the Shaykh begins his answer, and he says, after praising Allah and sending salat and salam upon the Messenger of Allah, he says, for indeed I welcome you, and I say that I love you for the sake of the one for whom you loved us, And we thank Allah for the fact that you have this trust in us. And I call to witness, and this is from the humility of the Shaykh. He says, I call to witness from those who are present, from the angels, and I call you to witness that I am much lesser than what you have described me. And however I am, by the praise of Allah, simply a student of knowledge, I have a certain ability which I know in dealing with certain issues, and likewise in some issues of al-Jarh wa ta'deel, meaning in speaking about the people of Hizbiyyah and innovation. And all of this is from the bounty of Allah. This is from the bounty of Allah upon me. And then it is from the bounty and the favor of our scholars, the contemporary scholars, and the scholars who came from before. And this is from the humility of the Shaykh, in response to what the questioner said. And then the Shaykh says, as for this question of yours about those people and how to behave with them, then the answer is from numerous angles. The first angle is, they have lied upon Al-Albani when they accuse him of al-irja, or they said that he has irja, and he says whoever rules upon Albani that he has irja, then this person either he does not know what is irja, or he does not know who is al-Albani. But this is merely something that is relied upon. This accusation is something that is relied upon by the people of falsehood, in order that they may call the people to themselves and to their manhaj of making takfir of the sinful people in general, and making takfir of the rulers. This is just a mechanism and a plot and a ploy that they use. And the Shaykh says that Al-Albani does not have any irja at all. And as for whatever issues we may disagree with Shaykh Al-Albani, and in issues like that, then in those issues the Shaykh, he might have relied upon principles and evidences, but none of that expels him from Salafiyyah. Rather, he is an Imam from the Imams of Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and this is how it is with the person who is just and fair. That's the first issue about Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah ta'ala. The second issue, as for Abu Hanifa, then yes, he is from the Murji'atul Fuqaha. He was upon that particular innovation. For Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, in his view, Iman is only speech and belief, and he does not consider actions to be from Iman. And this statement of Abu Hanifa is something that is disparaged. It is opposed to the text and to ijma'. And for that reason, in that time, in the 2nd century, there were some of the scholars from the Imams of the Salaf who actually made tabdi of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala on this basis. And some of them, they severely criticized him. However, the correct position that we hold, the moderate position, is that he is from Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Abu Hanifa in general, and there are certain issues that are taken against him, like the issue of Iman. However, we do not revile him. We just simply consider him to be someone who erred in certain specific issues, and he departed from the truth in those issues when he expelled actions from Iman. But this is the position that we take with respect to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. The third issue in the question is that they have lied against Shaykh Rabi', حفظه ta'ala, because Shaykh Rabi', he said what he said, relying upon the books of Sayyid Qutb, quoting from the books of Sayyid Qutb. And the books of this man are a testimony against him. And the Shaykh says, I say to you that when we speak about people, our speech against them comes from 3 types of sources. That whenever speech is made against the people of innovation, there are 3 ways that we speak against them. The first of them is from the actual books of that man, his own books. We go to his books, which are spread, and they are written by his own hand. How can you deny that this is the truth? When you quote from that book, that's the first way. The second way is that we take his recorded voice. His recorded voice. There is a tape, and that voice is his. And the third thing is that we take the information of the trustworthy people, the thiqat, who come and say that so-and-so said such and such. This is an acceptable basis for making jarh and ta'deel upon individuals. This is how the Salafis, this is how our scholars, this is how they operate. They operate on the basis of these three things. However, we see that the Shaykh says all of these are the masadir of Jarh indana. This is how it is with us, that these are the sources upon which we can rely in order to disparage people and to show their deviation. So the Shaykh then goes on to say that Sayyid Qutb, his books are a witness against him. In his books we see the bid'ah of wahdatul wujud. We see there are statements of kufr in his books. Some examples: he claims that Islam is a mixture of Christianity and communism, socialism. And there are many other statements like this. The Shaykh just alludes to the point that he has statements of disbelief. He has negation of the attributes in his books, in his commentary on the Quran. It is a commentary based upon the Ash'ari, Maturidi, Jahmi, Mu'tazili doctrine of denying the attributes of Allah, denying Ahad, Hadith, and so on and so forth. He speaks of takfir of the rulers, making revolutions against the rulers, and so on and so forth. Many deviations in his own books, written by his own hand. How can this be denied? So the Shaykh says, we find that there are only three types of people who advise with the books of Sayyid Qutb. There are only three types of people. In fact, from the answer of the Shaykh, we can apply the same principle to the one who advises with the books of any of the people of innovation. The same categorization would apply. The Shaykh says, the first type of person who promotes the books of Sayyid Qutb, or it could be any person of innovation, is a person, sahibul mashrab nafsihi. A person who is upon the same thing. He's upon the same mashrab, upon the same drinking place. He drinks from the same place, same fountain. He's upon the mashrab of Sayyid Qutb and his takfiri methodology. Then this person, the nation must warn against him. This takfiri, extremist, khariji, he should be warned against. Even if he claims to be Salafi and ascribes to Salafi, we warn against the likes of these people openly. These extremists, terrorists, deviants. The second type of person is the one who does not have any criterion. Even though he may be upon the Sunnah, he doesn't have any criterion. He just simply hears some nice, beautiful speech which might be found in the books of Sayyid Qutb. It is poetic, it is nice, it is, touches the soul. Like, many of the scholars actually say that in parts of the commentary fi dhilal al-Quran, it's because it's not really a commentary, it's just basically an expression of how the beauty and the feelings of the Quran. So he's writing really from the top of his head. And sometimes because he's a literary person, he manages to catch, some beautiful expressions. Okay, this no doubt is found. But then, we find that Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah ta'ala, he would say that the innovators in his time, like Al-Harith Al-Muhasibi, he was a person who would bring tears to your eyes if you sat and you listened to his admonition. He would bring tears to your eyes and he would remind you of the hereafter, and your heart would soft and melt. But Imam Ahmad said, beware of him. Do not sit with him, and beware from him, because these people, they disease your heart. Right? So just because someone comes with the eloquent speech and it melts your heart, this does not mean that this person now is a person of the Sunnah. No. So a person, the second category of person who might promote the books of Sayyid Qutb is that he's got no criterion. He just hears some expressions which are good, and he thinks that this now is something, that this approach is a general approach to the person who wrote this book. That all of his books there is benefit, and there is something like this. This proves this person doesn't have any criterion or any furqan. And so we do not pay any attention to the statement of the likes of this person. We don't give it any attention or pay attention to it. The third category is a person who is jahil of Sayyid Qutb. He doesn't know anything. And he might have been deceived by the fact that the people of misguidance have given tazkiyah for Sayyid Qutb, or those who do not know his reality have given tazkiyah for Sayyid Qutb. This we do not pay any attention to his kalam or his statement. Then the Shaykh comes to the final part of the question, which is that I advise you that you spread the Sunnah, because you are the people who hold fast to the Sunnah, upon the way of the Salaf as-Salih, you should be very severe and active in doing that. You should hold fast to the Sunnah, bite onto it with your molars. But you should use hikmah, wisdom, and good admonition. And you should aid and support the people of the Sunnah and keep company with them. And then the Shaykh says, I also advise you that you do not debate and argue with the likes of those people, meaning those extremists, terrorists, deviants, takfiris. Do not argue with them. And do not enter upon them to debate these issues, because you people, you have held fast to the Sunnah. So whoever is a person who is an imam in a masjid, let him preach the Sunnah in his masjid. And whoever is a teacher, then let him, like in an institute or a place or a school, then let him teach the Sunnah in his school. So he should teach in this way, but do not mix and engage with the likes of those people. And keep company with the general people in your society, in your community, and teach them the Sunnah. But as for those people, then beware and take caution against them. Warn from them whomever you are able to warn against, and in accordance with your knowledge, with your level of knowledge. Do not go above your level of knowledge, but warn within your capacity. And so the Shaykh says that this type of warning is something that requires strength. It requires 3 types of strength. The first type of strength is quwwatun shakhsiyatun. You got to have a strength in your personality, in your character, to be someone who is going out and to warn against these people. The second type of strength is quwwatun ilmiyya. You must also have strength in knowledge. You have to be rooted in knowledge in these issues to be able to go out and to speak the truth and to warn against these people. And the third one is quwwatun makaniyya inda nas, that you must have a strength and position amongst the people, meaning that you must have position amongst the people in order to warn. So warn against them when these conditions are fulfilled. When you have this strength, the strength in character and personality, the strength in knowledge, and the strength in your position amongst the people, meaning that are the people in general going to listen to you? Yes, you have a relationship with them. Yes, then go ahead and warn. You look at all of these 3 things and you bear these three things in mind when you warn from the likes of these people. So the Shaykh says, this is my nasiha, may Allah bless you. And this brings us to an end of the answers of the Shaykh. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward the Shaykh greatly and immensely for clarifying these issues in which there is much confusion. And we will finish inshallah ta'ala, because today's lecture was supposed to be the lecture called being grateful to Allah for Islam, Sunnah and Salafiyyah. So obviously we could not do this lecture because we wanted to complete the lecture from yesterday. So maybe in the next 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes, I will finish just with some brief points, inshallah, that relate to this issue of being grateful to Allah for Islam, Sunnah and Salafiyyah. And I will do this on the basis of 3 statements from 3 Imams of the Salaf. And I advise that you write these 3 statements down and that you memorize these 3 statements, because they will help you to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mah of Islam, Sunnah and Salafiyyah. So the first statement is the statement of Ibn Umar, Abdullah Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. It is narrated by Imam al-Lalaka'i in his book Sharh Usul I'tiqad Ahlus-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. He says, Ibn Umar says, ما فرحت بشيء من الإسلام أشد فرحا بأن قلبي لم يدخله شيء من هذه الأحواء. Ibn Umar says, I have not rejoiced with anything from Islam with a more severe and intense rejoicement than that my heart, nothing from the desires entered my heart. Let me read that again. ما فرحت بشيء من الإسلام أشد فرحا بأن قلبي لم يدخله شيء من هذه الأهواء. I have not rejoiced with anything in Islam with a more severe rejoicement than that nothing of the desires, of these desires, have entered into my heart. When did Ibn Umar die, ya ikhwan? When did Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, when did he die? He died in 70 Hijrah or thereabouts, 70 Hijrah. So who is he speaking of when he says that these desires did not enter my heart? Who is he speaking of? He's 70 Hijrah. So who is he speaking of? What desires is he speaking of? Huh? Which innovators appeared before 70 Hijrah? Huh? Qadariyah and the Khawarij and the Rawafid. Right? Shia Rawafid. Or the beginnings of the Rawafidah. So in before 70 Hijrah, he is expressing that he was did not have a greater severe rejoicement than that these desires of the Khawarij, Rafidah and the Qadariyah did not enter into his heart. You also know that Abdullah ibn Umar was the one, the first hadith in Sahih Muslim, the hadith of Jibreel, the introduction to that hadith, where there were certain of the people of knowledge from Iraq came and traveled to him to asking about those who began to speak about Al-Qadr, and he freed himself from them. This is the same Abdullah bin Umar who is saying that. Right. This is the first narration that you should memorize and write down. The second narration, and all of these narrations are the same. The second narration is from another Imam of the Tabi'een. He is Abul-Aliyah. Abul-Aliyah rahimahullah ta'ala. What year did he die? When did Abul-Aliyah die? Rahimahullah ta'ala. 80 Hijrah. 80 Hijrah. He took knowledge from the companions. What did he say? In fact, there are two different narrations from him. He said, "Ma adri ayyul ghanamaini aliyya a'zam." I do not know which of the two favors, or which of the two booties, or which of the two favors are greater upon me. إذ أخرجني الله من الشرك إلى الإسلام أو عصمني في الإسلام أن يكون لي فيه هوى. He said, I do not know which of these two favors are greater upon me. That Allah took me out of shirk and entered me into Islam, or that He saved and protected me in Islam from having any desire, meaning innovation, bid'ah, deviation. This is one wording which is reported, and we see in another wording that is reported, Abul-Aliyah said, "Ma adri ayyul ni'matayn afdal." I do not know which of the two favors are greater upon me. Ni'matan an hadani Allah azza wa jal lil Islam, wa ni'mah idh lam yaj'alni haruriyan. The favor that Allah guided me to Islam, or the favor that He did not make me a haruri, did not make me from the Khawarij. So this is the second statement. This is Abul-Aliyah. So again, in his time, we see the same innovations. The bid'ah of the Khawarij, the Qadariyah, and the Rafidah. And then we fast forward 100 or so years to the next century, to the end of the next century, to the Imam Yusuf bin Asbat, rahimahullahu ta'ala, from the Imams of the 2nd century. And he said, as is narrated by al-Lalaka'i as well, he said, "Kana abi qadariyan." My father was a Qadari. "Wa akhwali rawafid." And my maternal uncles, they were Rafidah. Shia Rafidah. فَأَنْقَذَنِي اللَّهُ بِسُفْيَانٍ. And then Allah, He saved me by way of Sufyan. Now these three narrations, ya ikhwan, this is the asal of our statement regarding being grateful to Allah for Islam, Sunnah and Salafiyyah. Now I want to ask you a question. These Imams, two of them, they lived in the 1st century after Hijrah. All they saw was the bid'ah of the Khawarij and the Rafidah, and they just reached the bid'ah of the Qadariyah. And likewise, Yusuf bin Asbat in the 2nd century after Hijrah, he saw the bid'ahs of the Rawafid, the bid'ahs of the Qadariyah, the bid'ahs of Ahlul Kalam, the people of Kalam, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila. I want to ask you a question, ya ikhwan, and I want you to ask this question to yourself. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought, or He kept these people upon the haqq. He brought these people to the truth, and He kept them upon the truth. I want to ask you a question, and to myself as well, which is that in this 20th century, 13, 14 centuries have transpired since these Imams made these remarks and these statements. And in those 13, 14 centuries, we have seen the tribulations and the calamities and the innovations and the misguidance and the groups of misguidance who call to hellfire and the callers who call to hellfire have multiplied and multiplied and multiplied, such that a person will be born in Islam thinking he's born into Islam, he's born into kufr. Meaning that this is a scenario that we find that can exist. Like someone who might be born amongst the heretical Sufis, right? He's born by way of Allah's qadr, Allah decreed that for him, and he's born to be raised amongst the, for example, even the Qadianis, for example, who ascribe to Islam, or to the extremist Khurafi, the deviant Sufis who are, believe in Wahdatul Wujud and so on and so forth, right? This is what people are being born and raised into, right? And innovation has filled the world over. The innovations of the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'tazila, the Asha'ira, the Qadariyah, the Rafida, the Mu'tazila, and every sect you can think of. Who do you think has received a greater favor? Do you think Ibn Umar received a greater favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or Abu Aliyah? Or Yusuf bin Asbat in that time? Or do you think you in the 21st century, in the presence of all of this misguidance that you could have been born into by way of Allah's decree, or that you could have been raised upon, yet Allah saved you from all of that, from the bid'ah of the Khawarij, bid'ah of the Qadariyah, bid'ah of the Rafida, bid'ah of the Murjiyah, bid'ah of the Jahmiyyah, Mu'tazila, bid'ah of the Ash'aris, Maturidis, bid'ah of the Batiniyah, bid'ah of every single sect, the Tabligis, the Ikhwanis, the Tahriris, and the Qadiriyah, Chishtiyah. You can go on and on and on and on and on. Who do you think the favor is greater upon? Do you have a greater favor? I'm asking you a question. Is the favor greater that in the 20th century, close to the time in a relative sense when Dajjal is to appear, and close to a time when many of the minor signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah have already taken place, that you know what the haqq is, you know the truth, you know where it is to be found, you know who are the scholars who are upon it today, you have the books present in front of you for which you never had to travel, like the Imams had to travel for years and years and years to collect a single hadith. You never had to do that. You can type an address on the internet and you can find the truth. You have a device in your hand and you can listen to the speech of Ibn Baz, Al-Albani, Ibn Uthaymeen, Shaykh al-Fawzan, Shaykh Rabi, Shaykh Ubaid. You have that benefit. Upon whom is the benefit greater, ya ikhwan? Upon you or Ibn Umar, or Abu Aliyah, or Yusuf bin Asbat? Question? Alright. So therefore, this issue of having shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't even need to answer this question. You already know what the answer is. That being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this favor is something that is wajib upon every single one of us. How is this shukr? How is it manifested? This shukr is manifested by clinging fast to this truth. Because these scholars, these Imams, Ibn Umar, Abu Aliyah, Yusuf bin Asbat, do we see that they abandoned the way that they were upon? No. We saw that they showed gratefulness to Allah. They were Imams upon the truth, severe upon the truth, calling to this truth, sticking to the way of the Salaf. And that is part and parcel of being grateful to this favor. Do not be ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being lax in learning and acting upon what you learn. Do not be lax, do not be ungrateful for this favor by not seeking out the scholars, traveling to them, seeking their books, learning from them, taking your issues to them, loving them, defending them. This is part and parcel of being grateful for this ni'mah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Part and parcel of this favor is to call to this your family, your relatives, your children, your parents, call them to this truth and this ni'mah that you have been given. This is part and parcel of being grateful to the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are many other issues, ya ikhwan, which are from being grateful to Allah. Perhaps this should be a separate lecture in itself on another occasion. But with this we conclude. I remind myself with this and with you. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us thabat and ikhlas upon this path. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.